This slide is available. I have used this in many presentations. I would like to point out that if there are any slides that you see here you would like and you would like to use for your sales presentations, please let me know. But I do want to talk a little bit about where things have evolved. When I look at the comparables here in Asia, I know that Tencent and Alibaba started sometime around 2008 as they were copying much of the S3 products, the EC2 products, as was Google and Microsoft, and then some of the comparables that came after. But something to keep in mind is that Filecoin really started in 2014, really more on the IPFS side, but even 2017. And the reason I bring that up is things are still evolving. I know there is a strong demand from a lot of people for much of what we have to offer to look like the competitors. We are not there yet. Those tools are being built. I hope that everyone sticks around to actually utilize them so we can steal customers from the competitors out there and provide better services and hopefully better customer service. Who here has ever tried to call Alibaba or Tencent and try and get a customer support person on the phone? How about Amazon or Google? That's right. Their customer service is terrible. That is one competitive advantage you can offer, I believe, in the Filecoin ecosystem, is that if you have a problem with one of the major cloud providers, unless you are one of their top 25 customers, you will submit a ticket and wait. It's not really an ideal scenario when you're in an outage situation or you just want to get something done quickly. So one of the benefits I see in the Filecoin ecosystem is the ability to sell and charge more for customer support on top of your services. I know that a lot of this has been covered before. I do want to talk just briefly about the global storage market, and then I'm going to get even more narrow, specifically about the archive storage market, where the current product market fit is. That's a more narrow market. It is not as big in Asia as it is in the United States. I do know that. I do not have great numbers for APAC. I know there's some people here in the room that say that they don't even know if people use the deep archive products that Tencent and Alibaba offer. If anyone would love to talk about that, that would be great. It is some inside information that we were trying to gather, but in general, most people here, at least in East Asia, are using hot storage. But there still are tape arrays floating around the world, especially in Asia. There are lots of opportunities to go after archive storage business customers. One reason I like the archive storage business, people tend to sign multi-year commit contracts. They're not going to switch. Therefore, your cash flow is relatively predictable and your customers tend to stick around for a long time. So you're not constantly having to lose a customer, which a lot of hot storage products have to deal with. People get fed up with the cost and therefore they end up moving to an alternate provider. This is especially true in the United States, where the three major cloud providers are giving away credits and people are engaging in what we call credit chasing. So if you're a startup, you'll receive somewhere between $500 and $200,000 worth of credits. And then if you're smart, I don't know if they do this between Tencent and Alibaba, but you'll just say, hey, I'm a new startup. Look, I've raised either a small round or a Series A. Please give me free credits, and they'll do that. And DevOps engineers will credit chase before they get locked in. So that's something that occurs not very frequently in the archive storage market. People tend to just leave the data there, stick it there. It's a smaller line item. They pay that bill, and it's much easier to get multi-year commits. We're going to talk briefly about that. When you go out and try and sell storage, I know people here have tried, they've probably failed. It's a great learning experience to understand why. Most of the time, and we were talking about this earlier, people can probably comment on this, why do you switch to an alternate provider? Most of the time it's because your egress costs have run out of control. I know this is a little hard to see. Let me go back, sorry. The red cost is the egress cost, the transfer fee. The blue is your actual storage cost. Now I did some price discovery on 10-cent deep archive. This column here is Beijing. This one here is Hong Kong. Hong Kong does not actually offer a deep archive product. They offer an archive product, probably because they've had longer term data center deployments. But again, you can see here these providers here on the right hand side with the red columns. Those are major cloud providers. And in fact, even in the United States, the same cloud provider has a different cost structure in a different part of the country. And that's because the data center is actually newer and they're using tape that they've purchased from, I believe it's IBM, nobody really knows. But you can see to store a terabyte of data in Ohio versus Virginia on the East Coast is actually almost 98% cheaper. But they make up for it with egress costs. Now your other providers where we're about at right now, most Filecoin providers in the ecosystem, at least outside of APAC, are charging between $3 and $5 per terabyte per month with no egress costs. Now why would they do that? Because there are competitors that are doing the exact same thing that are offering hot object storage in the United States, and that's specifically Backblaze and Wasabi. Now I put a product in here that you would have to call them to get the price. The University of Southern California runs an archive business. I cannot give you the revenue numbers, but I can tell you they have a backlog of $80 million of business. They sign 6 and 20-year commitments to store data, meaning the customer is locked in. If they were to leave that contract, they would owe the remainder of the contract. This is done on a 6-year commit. They get $5.55 per terabyte per month. They will store that either on tape, or they actually are going to be storing it on Filecoin here pretty soon, or they store it on Azure Blob. So that gives you an idea of what a United States university has a whole business unit charging for archive storage with a backlog. This I could probably, I have it in an email and a discussion, but they probably do somewhere between 10 and $20 million in revenue just on archive storage. Not bad. This is just an illustrated example of what you can charge on a yearly basis. Again, I'm trying to highlight where you can win deals is by not charging for egress. Now I know this is very difficult in APAC because internet circuits on a 1 gig and a 10 gig tend to be about 2 to 5 times more than other parts of the world. That doesn't mean there are not opportunities. If who here has negotiated with a telecom for a 1 gig or a 10 gig circuit? And I'm sorry, I'm using the word circuit because that's the standard telco. Who here has negotiated a contract for a 1 gigabit or 10 gigabit internet connection in a data center? Please raise your hand. So my guess is that in your data center contracts, and let me ask another question. Who here is paying for their internet at their data center, either using the data center's paper, meaning you pay the data center directly, or you're paying someone else? Right, so it's on, you pay for your internet on your data center bill, correct? It's not a separate bill. Yeah, you're probably getting ripped off just because data centers are in the business of marking up internet, but that's one way you can actually optimize your cost structure. I just want to throw that out there. There are also people that can help you negotiate those bills. We have both those connections now in Hong Kong. If you have equipment out there, or if you want to talk to some of our resellers in the United States, they're able to push down the price. But the only reason I bring that up is that you're never going to be able to probably get into the egress business unless you build the software to meter the egress. Who here is actually charging for egress? Anyone? Raise your hand if you charge for egress. Correct. And the reason for that is probably because you don't have the software built. I would advise you not to get into the egress business. Wasabi and Backblaze utilize something called a fair usage policy. That is the policy in English that states if you are storing a petabyte of data and you egress 10 petabytes of data per month, that would be against the fair usage policy. But if you're egressing 1 petabyte of data per month, that would be more within the guidelines of fair usage. That's what most of the SPs are doing in Europe and North America, is they just have a fair usage policy. Again, internet is cheaper, but it is a model you can easily copy. The number 2 customer priority when you're going out and selling Filecoin services, at least we see, at least in the data storage market, and everyone here knows this, it's geography. The reason that's important is for physical audit purposes. It's going to be very difficult if you ever go and store real data on the Filecoin network and tell people that it's not in China and it's somewhere else. I can tell you that I have US customers that tell me directly that when we show them this map, they do not want data stored in China, and vice versa. So just keep in mind that this tends to be the number 2 customer priority. I understand it's somewhat different a little bit, at least in China, but even when we talk about Singapore and Hong Kong, in India, this is always a customer concern you cannot ignore. Now, let's talk about the features that matter and why we can actually win deals utilizing Filecoin. There are major cloud providers that have lost data for customers. That includes Tencent and Alibaba. Amazon has lost data of customers. How is the customer compensated? That's for the attorneys to determine, but usually it's based on the service level agreement. But if you're an e-commerce business or you're a movie studio and Amazon loses your data, or Tencent or Alibaba loses your data, they're going to settle with you. And in that settlement agreement, they're going to say that you cannot publicly say that they lost the data, which is why we can walk into a room or a sales meeting and talk about the incentive-driven, we'll call it graphical possibilities that are coming, and I can show you some of those in private. But showing your customer that the data is actually stored and incentivized to be stored is a big win. Now, it's a difficult sales process, I understand that. But it is the one quality of service that we can prove that our competitors cannot prove. How do you prove it? That's all on-chain data. It's readily accessible. How you choose to render it, where's Laura? Oh, Laura will help you out with that. Raise your hand, Laura. Laura will help you build the user interface to prove that the data is on-chain. For a fee, of course. She's not going to do that for free. FileDrive. I just helped FileDrive make some revenue. I'll take my cut when the deal closes. Okay. I'm just going to talk briefly about one other thing that's being sold here. I don't want to fault anyone for doing this, but keep doing it until it's gone. There was a very famous bank robber in the United States. His name was Willie Sutton. And they created a law for him because he was asked by a reporter, why did he rob all of those banks? And his reply was, because that's where the fucking money is. Now, I understand why people are doing this. If you want to sell data cap, that's fine. Keep going. But at some point, you're going to have to charge for your services. And that's what we're here to help you do. If you don't want to be in the data storage business, keep selling data cap and keep being in the CC business. But the key here, in the long run, is it a winning strategy? Likely not. The winning strategy is to charge probably a floor, at least we see, of about $3 per terabyte per month per copy. There are customers that are willing to pay for multiple copies in fiat. There are also SPs that don't want to do data onboarding. They just want to store a copy. And they'll do that for a lower fee, and you just have to pay them in fill or fiat. So don't ignore, I'm not saying you can't sell data cap. I don't care. Keep doing it. I think it's great. We created a layer 2 token that, well, it's not even layer 2, but it's almost like a layer 2 token that people are trading. But in the long run, you're going to have to try and start charging for services. If you don't understand how to do that, that's what I'm here for. I understand it's going to be completely different in China, and I'll be clear. There actually may not be a market to charge for data on a network that's public and permissionless in China. But maybe we can get there with some of the tools that are being built to show that they're better than the competitors that are out there. Here's what I'm looking for. I have deals, but I need certain criteria to even bring those deals to you. I need at least 10 petabytes. It doesn't have to be raw. Deals can be expiring. I'm going to have to audit the facility because I need to know if this customer is willing to even put their data there. Right now, it has to be outside of China. I have no breadth or depth into China. You're going to need a 10 gigabit internet circuit. These customers are going to want to ingress, and they're not going to want to transfer drives around. So you're going to need a 10 gigabit internet circuit. I can turn up direct connect circuits between their facilities if needed. We can also work on how that might be subsidized. You're going to need a Hong Kong or a Singapore billing entity. I understand this is ruling out a lot of SPs, but I have deals that could be coming and I need partnership agreements. If you meet this criteria, please come to me. I will have to audit the facility. We are trying to formulate partnerships with major providers here that are going to resell Filecoin storage on a fiat share model. So you would be paid in Hong Kong dollar, SGD, or potentially RMB. I want to say potentially, or even US dollar. But you need to meet this criteria because I cannot go to these customers and show them an SP that has a 100 megabit internet connection. They will not take us seriously. So if you do meet this criteria, come to me, we can talk. I'm going to put you in the queue of analysis. We're going to go through whether or not you meet this criteria. We can also work towards getting some of these criteria closer. That's me.